initially started work in 1959 at Ittleton Main Colliery as a young 16-year-old lad. Starting work initially in the pit bottom on the haulage, coupling tubs together as they came down the shaft after being emptied on the surface. Moved around various jobs underground within the ventilation department before then doing my coal face training.
Well, initially when I went down the pit, I started work as what was called a button lad. Now, a button lad's job was to operate the conveyor belts that transported coal out of the mine. And it was my job to sit at a station, a button station, all shift, and I worked days, nights and afternoons and operate the conveyor belt. From there I progressed to being what were called a timber lad. A timber lad, their job was to use the underground railways to transport materials, principally wooden materials.
You've got electricians, colliery electricians, they're the people that look after the electrical equipment underground. You've got the colliery mechanics, they're the people who deal with the mechanical side of the machines. And then you've all sorts of other disciplines. You've got people driving haulage engines, you've got conveyor attendants, people on materials, of course, getting all the materials, because although we're taking coal out of a mine, we require an awful lot of materials to go in. So you've got people running the transport system, loading the materials and getting it into the mine. And then, of course, we have the coal face workers. These are the people who actually work at the sharp end of the business. They're on the coal face and it's their job to mine the coal.
When I first started on the coal face, we were still hand filling. In those days, the coal seams were undercut by a cutter, then bored and fired, i.e. using explosives to bring the coal down. The coal was then hand-filled onto the conveyor for transportation out of the mine.
I did then my face training and I became, in my terms, and forgive me for saying this, a proper coal miner. I worked at the face. My particular job was called a tailgate ripper. Now, a tailgate ripper drives roadways behind the coal face. As the machine is going up and down, cutting the coal, there's two roadways that travel out alongside of that. Tunnels, if you like. And it was my job, along with three friends, three mates, and there were mates, to drill the stone above the coal and put dynamite in. We weren't allowed to set the dynamite off, but we did all the hard work. We used to drill the holes and put dynamite in those holes, and then an official called a shop firer would come along and set the dynamite off. Big explosion, controlled explosion, but that dropped something like 10 tons of rock onto the floor, and then it was our job to move that rock.
General conditions on face were quite rough, to be honest, overall, looking back at it, although we took that for granted and it was quite normal for us. Temperatures could range anything up to the low 90s in various parts of the mine, and quite often you would have to take salt tablets underground with you to put in your water to keep you relatively fit during your shift. Quite arduous work for it. Conditions height wise about 5 foot of coal and seam, and you put your supports in the way that reduced probably to less than 4'6", so you were crawling around on your hands and knees. Lots and lots of noise from various machinery that were operating, the whole surroundings vibrating from the equipment that you were using to cut the coal.
The smell's very much carried in a pit, for the simple reason that mines were ventilated by fans, an intake side and a downcast and an upcast shaft. Now then, just for a simple, something simple, if somebody peeled an orange or a grapefruit or anything like that, that smell would carry for a long, long time, and people like to have that. You know, some fruit or something like that, at the snap time. And of course that smell carried a long way, so a lot of people's mouths were watering, you know, and there's other sides of it, of course, which most pits, there were no toilets, I'm afraid. You know, you just went where you could and when you could. And so some of the smells weren't as good as they proved.
All a mine fan does is basically create a small negative pressure. So the atmospheric pressure goes down the one shaft, what we call the downcast shaft. The atmospheric pressure forces the air down, travels through the workings. We have to have a series of air doors underground, which forms a circuit basically, such that the air travelling around has to travel to all parts of the mine, and then it comes up what we call the upcast shaft, and then just vent it to atmosphere. And the fan itself just creates a slight negative pressure such that gives it the force to travel round. Air doors, they just form a circuit such that the air has to travel all the way through the workings. If we didn't have those, what it would do, it would basically take the easiest route and it would short circuit. So it would go into the mine and come straight back out again and wouldn't travel through the mine workings.
As time progressed, around 1965, the coalfaces became mechanised, and the first coalface I worked on had an Anderton shearer loader, which cut the coal and itself loaded the coal onto the conveyor for transportation out of the mine.
We call it an AFC, armoured flexible conveyor. And when we got these AFCs, that enabled us to actually put a machine on the coalface that could travel through the coalface, cutting coal and loading it onto the conveyor. Rather than the miner using a shovel, then we could get a machine to do the job for us. And basically this is how we win the coal today. We use these AFCs and machines called shearers. It's just got a large cutter disc on it, travels through the face and it cuts the coal. A modern shearer is capable of probably cutting and loading something like 26 tonnes input every minute, whereas the miner would fill 20 tonnes in his shift.